action from the return legs of the quarterfinals between PSG and Aston Villa, and then Barcelona and Borussia Dortmund. Now, the UEFA Champions League is a gift that keeps on giving. It never disappoints. I mean, this is what we sign up for, nights like this. But the trouble for most of us is that due to limited resources, when there are multiple games on the nights, you can follow so many games at the time. Now, there were just two, of course, but like I told you initially, my concentration was going to be in following the game between PSG and Aston Villa, because I thought, if anything, Aston Villa were better off or were better positioned to overturn their 3-1 deficit against PSG as compared to what Dortmund would do against Barcelona. Guess what? We are barely into half the hour, and PSG are 2-0 up, and it's 5-1 on aggregate. And I'm like, this contest is as good as done, because Akram, apologies, Akraf Hakimi had scored to give PSG the lead, a little bit against the run of play, and then Nuno Mendes doubled that lead, and I'm like, I think we're done here. We're done for the night, because what's there left to play besides pride for Aston Villa? Because it looks like PSG are running away with this tie. And so what I did was switch to that game between Barcelona and Borussia Dortmund to find it that Dortmund were leading by goal to nil. And I'm like, okay, there's something here now. This is a game worth following. So I'm watching the Barcelona game, and suddenly it's 2-1. Sorry, it's 2-0 again. And I'm like, oh, Dortmund could have something here, because at the time they had halved the aggregate score to 4-2. And I'm like, if they can get another goal, it could motivate them. But unfortunately, they conceded an own goal that made the tie 2-1. But then I'm like, maybe all hope is not lost. So I stuck the Barcelona game a bit. And then I think it was Ronald Araujo. He basically gifted Borussia Dortmund a third goal. And because when he clearly tried to clear the ball and just passed it literally to the Borussia Dortmund player, who fires it into the back of the net, and it's 3-1. And then I'm thinking, okay, they just need that one goal. They need 2 goals to restore parity, like to make it 5-5. So it was 5-3 at the time. I'm like, is there a hope? Maybe because of the way Barcelona were largely playing, they were not at their best. So I'm busy following that, and something tells me, return to the Aston Villa game and see what's up. Only to get there, and Aston Villa were leading the game 3-2. And suddenly, it's, guess what? A 5-4 aggregate score. And it looked like Aston Villa may have a chance. So that was my dilemma of watching the fixtures. But I must say, I think what's to be expected for most teams that lost their first legs is that the first opening 15-20 minutes of the reverse fixture are very crucial. And as Aston Villa tried to show that, because they began the game with a lot of intensity. They were very intentional on getting forward. They wanted to push numbers forward, get that ball in the box, get their attackers onto the ball, try and score that a quick goal that sort of destabilizes PSG, that sort of unsettles them, that puts them under more pressure, that would cause them to make mistakes, that would cause them to play outside the model that they would have planned to play. And they really pushed for that. And it looked like it was going really well for the first 10 minutes, although some of their final third, decision making was not really good. And then we get into the 11th minute. Marcus Rashford concedes possession on the other side, and then PSG pass it around. And I did feel in that moment, because every time Aston Villa pushed themselves forward, they kind of left themselves vulnerable to potential counter-attack because of the numbers they were committing forward. Now, whenever they conceded possession, there was a bit of a lackluster in some cases in the way they fought for that ball back, because I do not know whether it was out of perception or expectation that they thought PSG were just going to pass the ball around, try to build it longer from the back, and then try and go forward. And yet, in this particular instance, they win the ball back really quick, and they pass it around. I think John McGinn was one of those culprits that I thought did not press on. Marcus Rashford did not, after conceding possession, did not re-engage himself in quick succession to try and, sort of try and win the ball back, so that, they can press down as PSG. So PSG go on to their counter, and then they put that cross in. Emiliano Martinez comes to save it. Of course, there was a bit of a miscommunication, or not miscommunication per se, but a poor judgment or lack of concentration. I think it was Pau Torres in that Aston Villa backline. They failed to clear the ball, and then the goalkeeper in Emiliano Martinez comes outrightly out to try and, scoop that ball, but then he buries it in the path of, excuse me, of Akraf Hakimi, who does no mistake, but then he fires, because once he buries that ball in the direction of Akraf Hakimi, he'll labor so much to quickly get back himself into, position to see that that shot, whatever is coming in, he can save it. But unfortunately, the ball brushes off his shin, and it hits the back of the net, and then PSG do lead 1-0. And I mean, that pretty much you could read on their faces of the Aston Villa players the disappointment, how it sort of tore them down in that moment as PSG were celebrating their goal. You could see the worry on their faces. You could see the blame they had on themselves for conceding that goal as early as the 11th minute. You could see it on Emiliano Martinez. You could see it on Yuri Tillemans. You could see it on Pau Torres. You could see that sense of disappointment in themselves. And was it 16 minutes later? Okay, concede possession. PSG get you on the counter, and this time around, it's Nuno Mendes. At the end of it, he scores. It's 2-0. And that's when I called it quits for that particular game at that particular moment in time. I'm like, this guy is as good as done, really, because it was Ousmane Dembele who did, by the way, provide the assist for Nuno Mendes. I think pretty much as well. So sorry about that. I keep merging. So, anyways, like I was saying, so he scores and it's 2-0. And I'm thinking, okay, the tie is now 5-1. I mean, we do not expect Aston Villa to make this kind of comeback. Even when you're prime Barcelona, I think it would be too much to ask of you to try and, overturn that kind of deficit. So I kind of gave up on that particular game. But along the way, Yuri Tillemans scores, and that's around the half-hour mark. But more precisely, in the 34th minute, he pulls one back, and once he scores, he does that celebration gesture with the fans. Of course, he's proud. It's a UEFA Champions League night. He scored a goal. But given that he simply makes the aggregate score 5-2, sort of, you almost didn't feel the need for him to celebrate in a way. You think to yourself, just pick the ball from out of the net, run it to the center line, and sort of, try and motivate your team and see if they can do a miracle in this one. Of course, John McGinn providing the assist for that particular goal. So 2-1 it was by halftime, and I do not know. You sort of wondered if you Unai Emery, what kind of words you give to your players, how do you motivate them, what do you say to them after conceding those 2 goals in the first half. Of course, it's not something you had planned for. You had hoped that you'd go and get those. You had hoped that it is you that gets the early goal and then play on the psychology of the PSG players and that kind of thing. So it's kind of that. So anyway, they went into halftime and with a 5-2 aggregate score. And you're thinking, Okay, maybe 3-0. It's big a deficit, but let's fight for our pride. And again, going into the resumption of the second half, everybody must be thinking the first 10-15 minutes of the second half are going to be very crucial. We must get a goal. And if we do get a goal, then maybe it sort of changes the tide of the game. And pretty much that's what happened, because in the 50th minute, John McGinn scores with Pau Torres providing the assist to make it 2-all. That's in terms of the score of that particular game, and then it's now 5-3 in terms of the aggregate score. And you're thinking, okay, now this is possible, extra motivation, and you're thinking, let's go for it, let's push for it. Guess what? Guess what? Just 2 minutes later, Ezri Konsa scores to make it through, and the Villa Park goes to absolute bedlam. When they conceded the first 2 goals in the first half, you could see the disappointment on the face of the fans for whatever hopes they had carried into today's fixture. In fact, there is a clip that I did watch where a fan, one of the Aston Villa fans, appears to be walking out of his seat, like as if he's leaving the stadium because of that disappointment. Maybe even if they were to lose on the night, they would have hoped that they would fight and then maybe lose it at the end, which would have been more painful, of course, but not in the manner in which they like sort of conceded, or the 2 quick goals. It did just disappoint the players. It also really put much on the fans. You could hear that bit of silence in the stadium when the scoreline was 2-0. So now we are into 57 minutes and it's 3-2. Obviously, the mood has changed in the stadium. They are all behind their team. We can do this. Let's hope for a miracle, because then the aggregate score is 5-4, and you're hoping for really a miracle. We just need that fourth goal, and then aggregate score will be 5-5. Of course, Luis Enrique on the touchline on the other side for Paris Saint-Germain was, of course, to say the least, feeling disappointed. The pressure had started to kick in, asking his team to stay composed, to concentrate more, and that kind of thing. Then, of course, game drags on, neither team is scoring. Desired Due had been brought on. Kivisha Kvaratskhelia tried to make runs that he had failed to kind of make all throughout the first half and the better part of the second half. And PSG were really pushing for that goal that sort of makes it 3-3. And it wasn't coming. Emiliano Martinez was really doing enough to sort of compensate for his earlier mistake that you could fault him for the first goal that they did concede. And he made quite a number of saves in that respect. But then that goal just did not come. And with actually almost the last kick of the game, Aston Villa have a chance. I do not even remember how the player was. He has the shot, that shot is sort of blocked, and you could see it. But before that, when the fourth official signaled that it was going to be 3 minutes of added time, you could see Unai Emery felt disappointed, the fans in the stadium felt disappointed, players on the turf felt disappointed. They felt that was too little a time for a fixture in which they had already celebrated 5 goals. So that means you've kind of lost a bit of time through those celebrations, especially on the side of PSG, because they took longer celebrating their goals. So you kind of had that kind of feeling of disappointment of it being below expectation that the referee had only added 3 minutes for a team that was hoping that they could, push themselves back into the tie. Of course, one of the players brought on by Aston Villa was, I think, Ross Barkley being brought on for Yuri Tillemans, who had had a very good game, by the way. Yuri Tillemans, kudos to the Belgian international there, and former Leicester City player. So very, very beautiful. So eventually, you could see the disappointment when that final shot was, sort of blocked. Usually in the Champions League, we also have that hope for that last minute goal. regardless of what side it comes. But usually you hope that it comes to the side that needs it the most. You're looking back to what, to 2014, that UEFA Champions League final in which Sergio Ramos scored that equalized against Atletico Madrid. Those are moments you're really looking at. You're looking back at I think 2012 when Didier Drogba scores the equalizer against Bayern Munich. I think, was it the equalizer or the winning goal? Right. But that header, I think it was the equalizer. So you're looking for moments like that. You're looking out for moments like that. So Aston Villa had hoped they would have that moment, but it just never came to pass. It just never came to pass, and the game finished 3-2 as at full-time score, and of course 5-4 on aggregate score, and then PSG marched on to the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League. Quite brilliant work being done there by Luis Enrique. PSG really. Now, two things I observed is that PSG are a very good team. They're capable of winning the UEFA Champions League title this season. But also what I noted is that they are prone to conceding, given that they have conceded 3 goals in one game. They did concede in their home game, and even Liverpool, they did concede against Liverpool in their home game. So that clearly communicates a trend that they are prone to, conceding. So moving on to the other game between Borussia Dortmund and Barcelona. Again, like I said, in our area preview, for those of you that were able to catch us in that live broadcast, we're discussing and I was saying it was unthinkable that if any team could overturn this kind of go 4-0 deficit after the first half, after the first leg, it would be Dortmund. Clearly, while I thought they would fight for their reputation in front of their home fans at the Signal Iduna Park, we all know about that environment, usually electric and that kind of environment. I did not expect that they would outplay Barcelona. I did not expect Barcelona to be as bad as they appeared to be, although they did create some chances, but they were sort of sloppy in the final third and that kind of thing. They looked devoid of ideas in so many moments of the game, and even that one goal that they did manage to score that turned out to be a mere consolation on the night was an own goal. So it was that kind of thing. So Sahu Giresse was the man on target. Of course, he scored a hat-trick on the night, but the first goal also equally in this game came in the 11th minute, which was a penalty that he converted. And what Barcelona did was sort of what I observed, especially in the first half, that while Borussia Dortmund were pushing on for those goals, trying to stay on the front foot, Barcelona was sort of still trying to play to stay in the game. Stay in the game, wait for your chance to come, and then capitalize on that one chance that you create, and sort of disappoint or disappoint Borussia Dortmund and by bringing the scoreline back to level. But it was 1-0 at halftime, and given that Borussia Dortmund had not missed a whole host of chances or clear-cut chances, you are thinking, yeah, they are leading, but it's still looking unlikely that they will overturn this result. And then 4 minutes into the second half, and Giresse is back on target. It's a brace for him on the night. It's 2-0. Borussia Dortmund have halved the scoreline, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, could these guys actually do it? Could they overturn this? Could they actually just even bring it to level? Because once you bring it to 4-4 on aggregate, then you definitely have a chance. Whether it goes into extra time, whether it goes into penalties, you definitely have given yourself a chance. And the game went on. But 5 minutes later, they conceded that own goal from the assist provider for the second goal in Ben Spiny, if that's a pronunciation. So very disappointing. Again, you could see it on himself, how disappointed he was in himself that he had considered an own goal and that kind of thing. But in the 76th minute, Giresse scores, and like I said, it was, I think, Araujo who does a make that error. I'll call it an error because of the way he defended Ronald Araujo. Instead of trying, he was of course trying to clear the ball away, but he basically passed it to Grisel, who scored, and it's still 1 with what? 14 minutes left on the clock. Anything can happen within 14 minutes when your aggregate score is now 5-3. You actually have a chance because push yourself, get that fourth goal. And it was possible. But unfortunately for them, Barcelona sort of played it out. They did not have a good night. And again, this particular game, while I still hold the opinion that Barcelona, Inter Milan, PSG are the biggest favorites in winning this season's UEFA Champions League. What this particular game showed us, and it's something that we talked about in the preview of the game just minutes before kickoff, was that when I looked at that Barcelona backline of Kubasi, Ronald Araujo, they really looked like a backline that you could penetrate. Gerard Martin and Jules Koundé. I talked about this, that it looked like a backline that a serious team could penetrate, that you could really cause this Barcelona side a lot of problems. Frenkie de Jong didn't look the best of himself in that midfield today overall. So, and they did concede 3 goals. So, if you're conceding 3 goals in a single fixture, and you're going to face a team like Inter Milan, who are very solid defensively, even though we know Barcelona are known for being high scorers, when you face a defensively solid side in Inter Milan, and this is based on the assumption that they're the ones that advance at the expense of Bayern Munich in tomorrow's return leg fixture, while Arsenal will be up against Real Madrid at the Santiago Bernabeu. Possibly we'll discuss that tomorrow if power allows us anyway. But you had that sense that Barcelona were going to concede. So when we find ourselves with a tie between Inter Milan and Barcelona, do not be surprised if Inter Milan wipes the floor with Barcelona, because Inter Milan are just solid defensively. I think they've conceded about 3 or 4 goals so far in this campaign, the UEFA Champions League, and then they have that attacking strength in them. Of course, Lautaro Martinez, Marcus Thuram, that front line, very quite interesting. And you know that a manager like Simone Inzaghi is going to really assemble a team that is good defensively, that is very hard to penetrate, but when they go to the offense, they always threaten because you have, and that kind of thing. We saw it in their 2-1 victory against Bayern Munich at their Allianz Arena, and that kind of thing. But anyway, all that aside, will Aston Villa be proud of their performance? They will be very proud of their second half performance. They will be very disappointed in their first half performance. Will Dortmund be proud of their performance? Yes, very proud, although it did get them over the line. And it's Barcelona through and PSG through. Tomorrow, there is it for everything. Real Madrid versus Arsenal. A lot has been said about that fixture. I've not seen Real Madrid fans that scared, that panicky. I've not seen Real Madrid themselves trying to do so many things. I've had ideas of them wanting to parade all their 15-year Champions League titles, the idea of not using their usual tunnel, that they want to come use another route into coming to the stadium. They want to have a closed roof and sort of soak and sort of enclosing all that Bernabeu noise, to try and kind of suffocate and intimidate Arsenal. They're pulling every trick out of the book to try and get some bit of advantage. Of course, most of it is psychological fair play in terms of trying to throw Arsenal off balance. We're talking about an Arsenal side that has not conceded more than 2 goals in 79 games. So I do not know what kind of, we can only speculate what kind of game that Mikel Arteta will want to play, but I do not think he will try to be defensive from the onset. I think they will be very intentional on wanting to avoid to concede in the first 15 to 20 minutes, because even Danny Ceballos did say that those first 15 to 20 minutes will be very crucial. So Arsenal will be trying to avoid to score, but I get the feeling that Mikel Arteta may want to play the Real Madrid game this time around, concede possession to Real Madrid, and then try and catch them on the break. For as long as you keep breaking up the play, frustrating the build-up, wait for your moment. That kind of game. I'm only speculating anyway. But we'll wait. We'll discuss that perhaps tomorrow if the time does allow us. For now, allow me to wish you a blessed night and thank you for always tuning to the broadcast. For those of you that do find it time to tune into us, those of you that do catch this broadcast much later after they're done, and do not take your time for granted, much appreciated. Just do not forget to always subscribe, comment, like, and share, and I'll see you next time. Stay blessed. Good night.